Welcome to Pause for the Truth, where you can sit back, relax, and hear an honest dialogue about health, wealth, legal, and social issues. The hosts are Dr. Rogers Kane, family practice physician, and Jocelyn Turner, health education consultant, with co hosts from the Northeast Florida Medical Society and its foundation. Stay tuned for the truth about matters affecting you and your family. We're here to tell you what's really going on and why.
Good evening. I am very happy to join you, my audience, our audience, once again on our Tuesday edition of Pause for the Truth. Obviously, my co-host is not here yet, but she will be here shortly. I am Dr. Rogers Kane, as many of you know. We've been presenting Pause for the Truth so we can present community matters, health, especially health related, but it also we handle social issues as well as political issues. But today, I am proud to have with us Miss Corrine Taylor. I'm so used to saying Taylor, but Corrine Taylor, whom is an environmental justice attorney. Is that right, Ms.
Yeah.
Taylor? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So obviously, that is not anything that's a matter of my expertise, but it's a matter of my concern.
Yeah.
Okay. I am, as Ms. Taylor may know, may have heard from Ms. Turner, I am a family practice physician, and being in primary care, we get to see some of the issues that first confront us, and of course, we may pass it on to the more specialized medical industry, to help assist us with trying to do something about the issues that we run into. Ms. Taylor, I'm going to let you introduce yourself because Ms. Turner, she'll be here in a second. But can you introduce yourself to our audience, please, ma'am?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. My name's Corrine. I go by Green Corrine, one, to help people pronounce my name, and then also to just connect my name to the work that I do.
Okay.
For the better part of like 15, 16 years, I've
Wow.
worked in the environmental justice community as an advocate, as here primarily in Washington, D.C. Uh,
Mhm.
but my entry to that career path started in Florida. In addition to living in Florida, I lived in Tampa and Orlando. I went to FAMU College of Law. And so while in law school, the whole I was just exposed to environmental issues and environmental law, and frankly I just was in rooms with a lot of white attorneys, and I was like, where are the black attorneys? I attended I distinctly remember like going to an Apopka Farm Workers Association meeting.
Yeah. A pop.
Yeah. Where a lot of the people impacted by the pesticides that worked in, as farm workers at different varying degrees, majority of them were people of color, women, but then all of the people that were speaking for them were white attorneys, white men.
Right.
And so I was just like, okay, that can't be the only way this looks. And so my time at FAMU led me to the EPA and kind of guided the career that I'm on now.
Okay.
I grew up though outside of Chicago in Evanston, Illinois, where Northwestern University is. And I've kind of bopped around the country. So I've got to, see what different communities look like, see what different issues they're experiencing, and also just grow my network in a really, I think, worthwhile way. So yeah, so happy to be here, and we can talk more about my work through the rest of the conversations we have.
Yes, ma'am. We sure will. First of all, congratulations on being a fellow rattler. Uh, Congratulations on that end. You know, I know you probably was happy to be at FAM or had quite an experience at FAM, contradictory to sometimes what we see in the rest of Florida. So,
And, you know, ironically, the experience I had in the law school was totally different because we were in Orlando. So we
right.
didn't get to have that main campus experience, but still just really, you know, great access to great professors and like anything with education, especially at HBCU,
Right.
friends for life, you know, that I've been able to make. So
very good, very
yeah.
good. So let's start the conversation with an explanation of what environmental justice means and why it matters.
Okay. Well, first, I want to start with even more basic, like what's your environment?
Okay.
And in the environmental justice movement, there's some phrases that we use, so I'll introduce you to that. But typically, when we talk about your environment, it's where you work, live, pray, go to school. You know, wherever you are, that is your environment. And in addition to where you are, like your skin, your hair, all of those things make up your own personal environment. And so we're constantly being exposed to things in the air, being exposed, depending on where we live, where we work, you know, how close we are to a highway, how close we are to a facility, etc. All of those things impact our environment. And
Right.
then when we think about environmental justice, it's this larger movement that acknowledges that there have been traditionally injustices in the placement of the most harmful facilities, and environmental justice works to help those communities advocate for themselves and as much as possible reduce harm. So that work is been in existence for a very long time. It may not have always gone by that term, but
Right.
when you think of workers' rights or even just health issues, all of those things are connected to our environment. And so I've been a part of that work for a very long time. Yep.
You mentioned a POC for those that may not know where POC is at, because it's not a big place, but it's in Central Florida, more or less, central kind of Western Florida type. Is that where we're at?
Yeah.
Yeah. My wife is from Belle Glade, and of course, you know, you can only imagine the kind of issues that we're seeing over off the off Lake Okeechobee. I remember going, and I used to go fishing with her dad, and I would go out and on the shores of Lake Okeechobee, and I would see tons of these chemicals being dumped by the cane industry, not Roger Cane industry, the cane, C-A-N-E, cane industry, and it, you know, which means those the animals and animal life were exposed to it, but especially fish. And people would go and fish in that, go and fish in Lake Okeechobee and the surrounding canal, the little barrier that's there. They go and fish, and of course, those fish was contaminated with all kind of pesticides and stuff that I would see some barrels of pesticide that were just tossed into Lake Okeechobee and just sitting there leaking chemicals. And Lake, you know, of course, Belle Glade being pretty much a Black community, along with Pahokee and other places down in Central South Florida. And it was horrendous. I couldn't believe it. I wouldn't eat any of the fish there. I'm not a big fish with bones eater anyway, but I for sure stayed away from those fish. As it relates to what they were contaminated with. So what brought you to I heard you say that you went to a conference and encountered a bunch of white environmental attorneys. And then you just kind of wondered what that meant for Black folk, why you wasn't there, why other Black folk wasn't there.
Well, I just that sad story particularly, but then just I think broadly, I've always just been someone who's genuinely cared about our community. I was like a very involved, nerdy student government kid, and I did my undergrad. I started at Fisk University, and you know, even there, being connected to a legacy of history of civil rights engagement. And when you think about voting rights, when you think about civil rights, all of that is connected to environmental issues. And then historically, all of that is also connected to like redlining and all of
Mhm,
those things that we think about that we don't always connect the dots to.
mhm.
And as I just learned more, as you know, if you just kind of look at Black history, then also the industrial history of America and where the most harmful facilities are located, and just capitalism in general. Typically, the research, there's so many reports that show that there's a strong correlation between race and the location of some of the most harmful facilities in the United States. And so, just as someone who cares about us, I just kind of gravitated towards environmental justice and advocacy.
Yeah, Miss Turner, good evening. How you doing?
Good evening. I'm so sorry for being late. How you doing, Miss Taylor?
Hey, I'm good. How are you doing, Miss Turner?
Doing wonderful. Thank
The
you.
one
Thank you.
thing, the one thing I will say, I have somewhat of an interest, I guess, because of my life experience. I just mentioned about my wife in Belgrade, but prior to that, I grew up in Fort Lauderdale,
Mm-hmm.
and we were within a block and a half of what was called an incinerator at that time. Where
Mm-hmm.
they just took and burned stuff, regardless of whatever it was. They
Yeah.
just burned it, and it obviously it was a Black neighborhood. It's like
Right.
being put in the middle of Harlem somewhere,
Yep.
old Harlem anyway. But it was ridiculous because we would come outside and there would be ash and stuff on the cars. We look forward to the days that the wind was not blowing well because it took the smoke straight up into the stratosphere, more or less. Okay. Otherwise, if it blew in our direction, we were
Mm-hmm.
inhaling it and so on and so on. And so we're still trying to this day to figure out what kind of harm it caused to us young folk. Well, at that time, we were young folks that were living there.
No, well, it's all connected. And if you think about asthma rates
Yes.
for our community, like asthma isn't something that is just naturally occurring. It's
Right.
because the lungs are exposed to a whole host of toxic chemicals,
Mhm.
particulate matter, dust from trucks, or like you said, from incinerators. Like we breathe.
Right.
When something is in the air, we're gonna take it in, and our bodies aren't supposed to be exposed to those things. And so that leads to cancer,
Right.
asthma, even heart disease.
Yes.
I'm sure as a doctor, you totally understand that. Like
Yes.
all of those kinds of exposures, especially if they happen consistently over a long period of time, or there's a theory, or there's a theory of practice in the environmental justice and environmental community called cumulative impacts, where if you
Yes.
have multiple harms in your community from
Right.
whatever facility, air, water, all of that, you have those cumulative impacts from those facilities. So you're going to be impacted in multiple ways, and it shows up for each person differently. So someone just might have asthma, and they might have chronic, asthma, something that, they don't outgrow. Because remember, we're always told that we should be able to
Yeah.
outgrow.
At 12 years old, that kind
Yeah,
of stuff.
like
Right.
someone might have asthma their whole life because of where they live, or someone over the course of time might have heart issues or cancer.
Yes.
So and then again, the data shows the placement of those facilities will most likely be where Black people live, and it's not even just poor Black people; it's just Black people, like middle class
Sure.
Black people, whatever. And again, that's when we look at it historically, that's going to be because of redlining and where our neighborhoods were forced to be for these decisions that were happening very like 80, 90, 100 years ago. All of those things are still impacting us today.
And
You
it
said
just,
something interesting though, and Dr. Kane, I want you to make sure that I'm headed down the right road or not. But when you talk about asthma, I've heard people say, "Oh, so and so has oh, well, then her dad has asthma, so yeah, then it's inevitable that she did." But is asthma only associated with environmental issues? That's the question that I have.
no, it's not only associated with environmental issue, but there's a huge impact by those uh, environmental concerns. Okay. I grew up, like I said, near that incinerator. I had asthma. I had asthma up until the age of 12, where it improved the so-called growing out of asthma,
Mm-hmm.
but it returned at 60.
Mhm.
Okay, 60 years of age. I didn't know if that was just because of global warming and what's associated with it, and or was it just as Ms. Taylor says, a reminder of my past, which
Yeah.
is what that is because of where we grew up at, and we're looking. I look at there was some studies being done in that particular, again, it's in Fort Lauderdale, those communities where they were dumping stuff. Not only they were doing the incinerator, but they had dumps that they were dumping chemicals in some of the local canals and stuff that ran in the middle of our neighborhood,
Yeah.
right next to elementary schools. And even here in Duval County, right across from University Hospital, if you recall, there was an ash site that paved over, and that's Darnell Cookman Middle School. It was paved over with maybe about, I think they said 3 inches of soil, and that was it.
That's not.
Otherwise, the people were parking on it, and so it's bringing up that same ash, remnants from those the coal. It wasn't coal ash, but from the ash burial sites, dumping sites that was here in Duval for whatever amount of time.
Yep. I have a few, like in preparation for this, I went back into my presentation bag, and I have some some data. Emissions from all power plants, this could be coal or other fuel sources, are responsible for 30,000 premature deaths, 7,000 asthma-related emergency room visits, and 18,000 cases of chronic bronchitis each year.
Yes.
In 2024, African-American adults were 14% more likely than any other U.S. adult overall to have asthma. And Black children were 60% more likely than U.S. children overall to have asthma. And in 2021, Black adults were more than twice as likely to die from asthma compared to others in the U.S. So, and then Black children 4 times as likely to die. So it's the correlation between these high numbers. If you go a few slides in, I think this is let's see, a few more. And we can go back to a lot of this because I kind of talk about the history.
You just tell me which way to go out.
Keep going. Yeah.
These are all instances of different situations.
Yeah, and we can talk more about it and go back to it. I just kind of looked at the historical views. One more slide, I believe. Let's see. One more. Yeah, so this is where I am. So like this is just some data on our experience and what happens for a lot of environmental justice communities. And I'm sure even from a medical perspective, we can talk about things very anecdotally, like, oh, my mom has asthma. We've had this in our community for a long time. But typically, we are not heard until there's data and there's research to show that this is a long-term impact kind of thing. And so there are tons of agencies, whether they be state or federal, or even nonprofits, who do collect this data to help build the case for why environmental justice, one, is an existing thing, but the true impact to Black people. And then, of course, something as simple as the death reports, the death certificate reports. And if you look at that, there's a way to also look at that to see why someone died. But this is just some data that I was able to look at. And
that last point, though, a Black family making $50,000 per year is more likely to live near a toxic facility than a white family making 15. Wow.
Yeah. So it's not just poor people. It's primarily Black people and other communities of color as well. Like Latino people experience this, Asian communities, but more than not, Black communities more than anything have been bearing the brunt of the most harmful facilities, when we make that correlation between our health impacts and then the exposures.
Real quick, you mentioned a couple of things like burning coal, as you say, and the effect that coal has. We have currently ongoing in our in the Jacksonville community for which I serve, and Ms. Turner, has been the native of all of her life. We have coal ash being imported in from Puerto Rico, and piled up 200 feet high. And you can take a rock and throw it twice, and the first home is sitting right there.
It's where it's being exported or imported from Puerto Rico.
It's being imported from Puerto Rico.
Why?
It must be a money-making opportunity.
I'm sure. Okay.
Yes, it's got to be a money-making opportunity.
Yeah.
Our local power agency is importing it in, storing it, and then my understanding is that they eventually take it on off to Georgia somewhere.
Okay.
But in the meanwhile, we got 200 feet high, and Ms. Turner has seen this. We got 200 feet high piles of coal, at least two of them. Okay, and of course, what is being taken with that coal being there, of course, you got to worry about dust. You know, when the wind blows, it blows coal, the coal dust. And then also when the rain hits, it gets into the groundwater.
Yep.
Some of that dust that has gotten blown into the air, settled on some of the trees and the plants in these people's yard, probably up to about 1.5 miles away, get on these people's plants. And of course, when it rains, now it creates puddles in the yard. So now the grandkids out there playing in it, the dog is eating it or drinking it. Let me put it that way. And so on and so on and so on. So, I mean, it's very important and it's critical that we recognize what is being done within our community to help protect our community.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask a question, and I'm not sure if you all talked about it before I got on, but during the Biden administration, environmental justice became a national priority. What were some of the most significant initiatives or accomplishments?
I have some slides on that. I tried to answer all your questions with visuals. If you, let's see how far in. Oh, go maybe 3 slides ahead. Keep going.
I'm just trying to see if you have access to move it around like you want to.
Okay.
But I'll go ahead and do it right now. A lot of times we can
keep going. Keep
going back the other direction. Okay.
Yeah. So that's a great question. While we're keep going, one more, a couple more. Go on back. Okay. So I was really fortunate to work in the Biden administration. I worked in the Department of Energy, and I chose the Department of Energy because that agency just manages like trillions of dollars. And I really wanted to learn more about the energy sector because we're impacted by it in so many different ways. And I essentially served as like stakeholder engagement and really did some strong outreach to, diverse energy companies who had yet to really develop relationships with the federal government, HBCUs who wanted to, get DOE grants, that whole kind of thing. So I got to see where the money was flowing. And this is one grant that I really wanted to bring to your attention. The Biden administration had $2 billion that was just for environmental justice communities. And like a lot of the funding for that started, the process to apply for that was towards like maybe that last year of the Biden administration. So right when it was time to make that transition from the Biden administration to the Trump administration cut off all of those grants. That's $2 billion. And typically what happens from administration to administration, if a grant is administered and processed accordingly, that program continues and those recipients receive those dollars and they can continue to do what they agreed upon, even though that, that fell under a different administration. But the Trump administration cut everything off. Right. And so that's $2 billion. And I went even further and and just in this report, the Office Inspector General, they reviewed the grants and they found nothing wrong with it. They said they were fair, compliant, transparent, all of that, but they still cut it off. $2 billion that would have been invested across the country, a number of applicants. And if you go to the next slide, I broke down what Florida would have gotten and what it could have done. So just here, you guys would have gotten nearly like almost 40, let's see, 20, 34, like $37 million was earmarked for your state just for environmental justice, just from this one grant. And that would have been money for Fort Myers to look at resiliency hubs. That would have been money for Tampa, Florida, and Hillsborough County to help disadvantaged 10,000 residents would have been impacted by that money. Then there's this one in Palm Beach, that's $3 million to help residents who were looking at climate resiliency planning. And Florida, a coastal state, being, in some places below and really impacted by hurricanes, this is important money that could have helped.
Yeah.
And that money was cut off. No one received those funds, none of it,
Right.
and that's just one grant. There were other billion-dollar grants that the Biden administration had for energy issues, for FEMA, and they were cut. If you go to the next slide, I kind of talk about more of it.
Wow.
So just in terms of energy related things, $7.5 billion, 321 awards was canceled.
Wow.
Just canceled. And
Right.
so they'll say, and they call it a scam, but it's not. Also to be noted that a lot of this money was going to be going to blue states. And so they were punishing states that went for Kamala Harris. And that's like, not like me making this up. This is what the facts are shown. Even here, I went and I just was looking through all the different places where I've been getting information. There was $5 billion for FEMA to do pre-disaster mitigation. They stopped that too. And they just won that money back. So FEMA is going to start going through and relaunching that program. So I'm certain that the average person does not fully grasp what the Biden administration was doing specifically for Black communities. I don't think they understand it. And for someone who had the privilege of being inside, like, it frustrates me when I hear people say that, they didn't do nothing for Black people, da 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 da. They hired competent experts who had a specific expertise, who understood the long history of transportation impacts, of environmental impacts, of energy impacts, who understood solar and renewable energy. And we were working incredibly hard to figure out how to change like historical imbalances. And at the switch of from November when that election happened to January when the inauguration happened, money that would have made and can like hire people, workforce development dollars, energy programs to provide us with, like coal is expensive. Fossil fuels are expensive. There have been wind projects that have been canceled, solar energy projects that have been canceled. And it's been intentional punishment for states, for programs that protected and could have supported Black and brown and poor communities, as well as communities and states that went for went for
Another guy.
We were being punished for being punished,
So the Justice 40 initiative received a lot of attention. Can you explain what it was intended to accomplish?
Well, Justice 40, and it was one of the executive orders that President Biden signed within, I think, like the first couple of days. Justice 40 was an executive order to change how the federal government looked at its dollars. And so it really articulated that 40% of the benefits, and benefits didn't necessarily always mean money, but 40% of the benefits of any investment in transportation, housing, energy, environment, 40% of those programs would go towards disadvantaged communities. And that itself is a really big deal. And the challenge with implementing that was it wasn't always dollars. It could be, oh, well, this, so I helped kind of articulate how we could measure a project to determine if something were awarded, how it would benefit the community that it was in. So we required every applicant for DOE funding to say, okay, we want this big federal grant. And what we intend to do is, hey, we're going to hire more people here locally. We're going to make sure that we're going to encourage union jobs, and union jobs are typically better paying jobs. We're going to maybe build a relationship with the local university or HBCUs or minority serving institutes to have internships or career pathways. We're going to train and recruit in this area. Just a whole host of different things. We're going to proactively deal and connect with communities to figure out how we can mitigate any environmental harms. Like we made it so that every applicant had to say not only why from a technical aspect was a project important, but then what kinds of benefits, community benefits would exist through that project.
So did it go away?
So a lot of those parts were either ignored, or some of them were already, depending on when the project was funded, they are still going, but there really isn't an interest in continuing a lot of that. So either like here, 321 awards that likely had that language in it were now they've just been recently reinstated, but those were canceled. So, but I don't think there is an interest internally in really making sure that those community benefit agreements, I don't think they're requiring them anymore.
Did you see any opportunities that were created for communities through federal environmental justice investments? Did anything happen that was positive? And it may not have been enough time from when you worked there to see anything positive happen, or once it was awarded.
Definitely a lot of positive things happened. I was a part of the creation and implementation of first off, getting a federal award is hard. Like the paperwork required to do it can be hundreds of pages, research, supporting documents, etc. So what we utilized was there's some congressional language that allowed us to create what are called prizes, which were lower threshold grants or awards that someone could receive. So it could be like $50,000, $200,000. And so we had an inclusive energy and innovation prize, and the application pool was the largest they had ever seen. And it was focused clearly at communities to help communities who had never worked with the federal government before, but had maybe a workforce development program, or they wanted to do some kind of energy tribal communities were applying for like to have solar farms in their communities, like whatever you thought that you could connect to Justice 40 or renewable energy, et cetera. It just kind of widened the scope of our work. And these prizes, the applications were like 10, 20 pages because you weren't getting as big of a grant. You were getting maybe $50,000, $200,000. And to a small nonprofit or community group, $50,000 to do your work is significant. It changes the trajectory. It allows you to fund pay someone to do that work, or to fund it, to get it from the idea stage. And a lot of people who received those prizes were then able to leverage that prize for other federal dollars. So those were the kinds of things that we did to support groups who didn't have the capacity to write a 200-page federal grant. And then in addition to when you get that grant, you have to do all of the back end accounting and, follow-ups and make sure that you're in compliance. Like that is also a very hard thing to do as well. And so for a small community group, we removed some of those barriers as well. So we gave people like an entry into the federal government that they could then leverage for other programs or other opportunities as well. Like we call it past performance, like I have this relationship, I've been doing this work. So those are some of the kinds of things that I got to see and be involved with. And a lot of, I'll be honest, there are times where I'm not necessarily sure, did I really make an impact, but
Yeah.
I'm constantly being told that a lot of the community benefit plan structure and a lot of those funding ideas does and does live within states that value it. So more progressive states that do still care about climate and energy and the environment have still like kept a lot of that ideation in how they do their programs as well.
Yeah, since those funding that funding that you spoke about has gone away, a lot of advocates are describing the current moment as one where communities are being left waiting, like waiting for, like, when is the government going to see the ash site that Dr. Kane referenced? If you drive by there, as I did, it just looked like dirt, right? And for the community, they don't know any better. They just think it's just dirt, right? So I think there's just so much education that needs to happen so that people will know, because people rely on the government to do the right thing. They just don't expect the government to do anything different, right? But for people to recognize when things are brought into their communities that could potentially cause harm to them and their families, and then to know that there was some funding coming to the community to help out, and the community is just waiting, right? And so it really is, it's something. I don't know what to say. It's just a thought that came to mind.
I don't know that people should even what I know to be certain is a lot of nonprofits and community groups and smaller business owners, what they've learned is that they shouldn't depend on the government.
Yes,
Like, it's not like, if they're truly looking to address an issue, I wouldn't trust the government to support it, because like
I meant to recognize toxins, like that 200 feet mound that Dr. Kane talked about. If you pass by there to the non-environmentalist eye, it may just look like a mound of dirt, but the average person doesn't know that it's ash from coal, right?
The federal government has essentially let the states off the hook for any kind of regulation. And if you look at there's also a trend that conservative states do not fund the offices that do the that observe and do the cleanups and look at regulations. They've cut those budgets too. So like environmental protections has been deprioritized, whereas like if you knew that federally these are the big priorities, and then you follow suit as a state, but now the EPA, the Department of Energy, HHS, all the agencies are transportation, they no longer care, and they've taken those words away. So if you now have policy that intentionally removes climate change, intentionally removes, a whole host of language that speak to harms done in our communities, then that says you don't care and you're not interested. And I think in terms of educating the everyday citizen about that, one of the biggest challenges with environmental issues, like while you can see that mound of coal ash, you also are dealing with a whole host of other issues for yourself personally in your community. And it's important, but it just comes down further in the list of things that are most important. And again, if your local government, if your state government doesn't care, and like it makes you feel less encouraged to speak up. And it's done intentionally so, to remove and to diminish community power and the community voice. All of this is to say, we don't care.
Well, one thing I want to make, that same coal ash, and I'm not trying to hype just on coal ash,
but it's a good example.
Right. That it has anything from arsenic and chromium and cadmium and mercury, lead. I mean, think about lead. in terms of how it affects our children. And we can never, I mean, it starts affecting their brain and the development and the neurological system. And there's no way to take it out of their bodies. So it's a permanent effect that it leaves to it. Talk about barium. I mean, it's just so much stuff in that coal ash, as you're probably aware, Ms. Taylor, but our audience may or may not be. The detrimental effect that may have on those families. It goes from the grandkids all the way up to the grandparents. And, grandkids, like I just mentioned, lead and stuff of that nature. But the grandparents also wound up being with asthma and the other hydrocarbons and all that kind of stuff that can take place in that community. It's a silent killer, more or less, is what they are.
And like what I think we do as humans and as people with these harms and these pollutants in our community, because it's silent, we just kind of bear through it.
Right.
We figure out how to survive, even though we're literally like slowly being, killed, and our lungs are being impacted, our organs are being impacted, our skin is being impacted, like all of it. Like it's a slow, steady thing that reduces our lifespan, that reduces the quality of our life. We still are able, because we are vibrant people naturally, or, we in community, we still thrive. We still are going to find a way to thrive, but it slows us down in a way that we don't understand, because it's not something that we necessarily can control.
And I don't think people realize it still affects their pocketbook, even though, because every time you go to the emergency room, because you have an asthma attack, you have to go to the doctor. If you got breast cancer, cervical cancer, all the monies that you spend to handle the ill effects of these chemicals come out your pocket. The government is not they're taking away your health insurance, which is one of the things that help handle those kind of issues. So I think it's so important that we recognize that even though we may say, we talk about pollutants and stuff of that nature, and we think about it at a 50,000 foot level, we need to start thinking about more of a grassroots level in the that it has on us, both mentally, physically, and monetarily.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you before, because it's 7:14. Are there any other slides? I have more questions to ask, but are there any other slides that you wanted to share with us? Because you did a lot of work putting it together.
I appreciate that. Go one more to the left, like forward.
I'm going to the forward. Okay.
So I also wanted to just kind of share. Data centers are a whole thing. And there's a big data center that SpaceX built in Memphis. And I wanted to kind of connect the dots. Go back.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean.
Ironically, one of the Tennessee recipients of Tennessee received a community change grant. And there was one that would have specifically been targeted for the Memphis area. And it was to do a whole host of things around renewable energy and community education. And one of the recipient of that was a Black woman, Latricia Adams, and her organization, Young, Gifted, and Green. They got like $20 million to do that work. That was one of the first grants that was attacked by the administration. And so now we jump forward after she was doxxed, like Fox News attacked her, a whole bunch of conservative newspapers attacked her, and she did not get that grant, but it was in Memphis, and that was in 2024. And now in 2026, we see SpaceX and that they have their data center there, and NAACP's suing on behalf of that community. But when you think about impacts, imagine how much more prepared the community would have been if that grant had been, fulfilled, and the education would have happened. You see what I'm saying? So a lot of this is done intentionally to thwart education that you were speaking to, Ms. Turner, in terms of educating the community, to remove people's ability to organize quickly, and then you see why, because they want to do projects like this. So I wanted to kind of connect, like, what happens when that grant doesn't show up, what could have happened, and then what happens instead. So
how can local governments, nonprofits, faith-based organizations or even residents continue the work regardless of federal policy changes?
I think there's so many of them that are still doing the work. I did try to identify a few in Florida. But I think just stay engaged, educate. I think right now the NAACP is a great partner to have. They have a very strong climate and environmental justice practice. So I would, and right now I think the issue that everyone is seeing value in connecting around is data centers, because not
Right.
only is it impacting people from their energy, your utility bill going up, but that's water usage and
Yeah.
all the noise associated with it. I think it's just educating people and finding creative ways to get these projects funded. A lot of philanthropy was really scared, frankly, to do environmental justice work. A lot of private philanthropy cut a lot of that money back. I can admit, I'm not certain what it's like in Florida and what that looks like for a number of groups, but like if you deprioritize climate change in a place like Florida,
Yeah.
where flooding happens and hurricane season is crazy, how do you, so you have to find new language, I guess.
Mhm, mhm.
Risk mitigation for flooding, I don't know, like you have to start being creative. But I think, one, educating yourself and staying engaged and finding a way to connect to people who are now being impacted by it at all different ends. And unfortunately, a lot of the science that proves that these things are real are being attacked too.
Yeah.
And like it's I recommend folks, like, it's not a coincidence that the same people who were fighting to protect the cigarette industry are now responsible for a lot of the attacks on climate change.
Yeah, I saw
So
young people involved during, you think about, I think what was it called? Truth? I'm trying to think of the movement that young people got involved in when it came to the tobacco industry. So
yeah.
what advice would you give young people who want to become advocates for environmental health justice or environmental health issues?
It's particularly for young people, our attention span is just getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller
Yeah.
because of social media. And so I think being able to utilize Twitter, not Twitter, but Instagram, TikTok or whatever in really creative ways to hold people's attention for like that
Yeah.
minute or less is important. I think starting young people, like when I say young, I mean like 5, 10, 12-year-olds, they
Mm.
get it and they're really, they care about, that's a really great place to start. And even talking to them, like I know as a 9-year-old, my brother had asthma. So I think they're going to see their peers, and if you start saying, well, the reason why this is happening is because of
That's
that
true.
facility over there,
That's
and
true.
because they're seeing it and they know, like, I got to get a breathing treatment every day at 3.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
then why? Why is that?
Yeah, talk about it more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
talk about it kids are smart. And if you
Yeah.
explain, like, this isn't just happening, it's not something wrong with you, it's something wrong with the environment.
Environment.
That's a way to connect them. And I think too, like, even when kids get their checkups, like, I don't know, like having those conversations as a medical practitioner, like, where do you live? What are you close to? Like connecting the dots for parents that, it could be, or even indoor health issues. Like, is your home properly insulated? Do you have mold issues? Like all of those things can play a risk with, or impact the people's risks for those
I'm
things.
glad you mentioned that because when people are renting, they have an affordable place to live. Sometimes they don't want to rock the boat, if you will, and call things out. Now, some will get bold and call the news station, and the news folks will come and interview, because that's happens a lot here in Jacksonville, where the camera crews literally went into folks' apartments, for example, and showed how, and these were apartments that were federally funded, and they went in and showed how there was mold and other toxins, and that's when these folks then, those slumlords as they call them, would then do something about it, as once they're called out. But people are just, rent is so expensive. When people find some place they can afford, they don't want to blow the whistle. They'll just worry about that issue when the time comes or if it comes. What gives you hope as you look toward the future of environmental justice?
Some days I'm not very hopeful.
Really?
I'm not. But I've had to like develop like my own wellness practice. You know, we love that new term. But like I picked up, well, I've always been like yoga, but like going outside, like being in the environment, you know, I realized I need to drink water. I need to get my sunlight in the morning. I need to go for a walk. I need to connect with my friends, you know, like the work part is not hopeful. You know, our democracy is totally under siege, right? Our democracy is totally being attacked.
Crumbling.
You know, we got midterms coming up. Like, how is that going to go?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be a realist. But I think I also have to take care of myself. And it may not be interacting with this work as often or doing things that are a little bit more positive. I can't say I'm always happy and hopeful. This is a scary.
If viewers remember only one thing from tonight's conversation, what would you want that to be?
Where you are an environment. Your body is your environment. Where everywhere you go, you are touching and breathing in something. And you deserve the cleanest air, the purest water, you know, and it's not as Black people, we have to fight for it, for our kids, for our well-being, and they will distract us with so many other things. But if you can't breathe in clean air and clean water and have access to like livable communities, how are you coping? So fight for those green spaces, those parks, you know. Yeah, enjoy the outdoors, and it's our place. We belong outside. It's not just something white people do, like tree huggers and all that. No, that's us.
Right.
That's us.
I totally agree with you. You know, as a grandparent, you know, I'm on the other end of the spectrum in terms of how long I'm gonna be here compared to my grandkids and so on and so on. And so, you know, the thing that I can leave them that's better than money, obviously, is the ability to be able to breathe, to help them manage their environment so that they can breathe and be able to fight off these villains of the environment, as I call them, villains of the environment.
Yeah, well, we usually have a mid-show moment, but we didn't get a chance to do it. So before you get off, Ms. Taylor, if we could ask Tyrone if you would go ahead and show that he always surprises us related to the topic. So go ahead, Tyrone.
I want to talk about a future a lot of communities have been promised, then told to wait for. Environmental justice. It sounds big, but it's really about one simple thing. No one should breathe dirtier air. No one should drink riskier water. No one should live closer to danger just because of race or income. Here's the startling part. In the US, Black Americans are exposed to about 1.5 times more particulate pollution than they create. Latino communities? Often 1.2 times more. Indigenous communities? They're 5 times more likely to live near abandoned mines and toxic sites. This didn't start last year. It's decades deep. Redlining in the 1930s pushed people of color into flood zones, industrial corridors, and heat islands. The map of yesterday's discrimination is the map of today's asthma, cancer risk, and storm losses. Put a face to it. In Port Arthur, Texas, kids walk to school past refineries. In the Navajo Nation, families still truck in water while uranium and coal legacies linger. In Cancer Alley, Louisiana, life expectancy can drop by a decade over a few miles. So what's being done right now? The U.S. created Justice 40, aiming 40% of certain federal climate and infrastructure benefits to disadvantaged communities. There's billions for lead pipe removal, home weatherization, transit, and clean energy. A new screening tool helps target places facing cumulative burdens. Some states go further. California requires cumulative impact analysis for permits. New Jersey can deny new polluters in overburdened neighborhoods. Community air monitoring is scaling up. Progress? Yes. But time is the enemy. Projects move slow, permitting is messy, and court fights drag. Meanwhile, heat waves hit harder in neighborhoods with fewer trees, and floods find the lowest ground, often the same blocks told to wait. How do we compare globally? The US is investing big, but countries like France embed environmental justice into constitutional principles and access to justice laws. The EU's do no significant harm rule filters spending. In South Africa, courts have forced clean air plans in coal regions. Australia is beginning treaty-based consultations with First Nations on land and water. The gap? The US still struggles with cumulative impacts and long backlogs at toxic sites, over 2,300 Superfund locations, many near low-income and minority communities. Here's the heartbeat of the future. Measure what matters, fund what's promised, and let communities lead. Not just cleaner air someday, cleaner air by zip code now. Because justice delayed is not neutrality. It's a choice, and we can choose different.
Wow. I told you he does an amazing job doing that research. We're at the end of the show. And at this time, we'd like to just give you, Ms. Taylor, an opportunity to share any final thoughts or last parting words, if you will, to our audience before we end the show.
Well, I appreciated the video because it just confirmed that a lot of the things that I said were correct. I'm always like, did I say the right thing? So thank you for that assurance. I do encourage people to think globally. I know like we're all impacted by something that happens here, impacts, folks there. You had mentioned that coal ash from Puerto Rico, and even in Puerto Rico, as much as sun as that country, or well, what you want to call it, but as that territory gets, they don't have control of their own energy system there. You would think they'd be more solar there, but they aren't. They have power outages all the time. I just encourage everyone to think globally. I encourage everyone to travel and see, the way we live here doesn't necessarily have to be the only way. And it's imperative that we learn from other countries, just like that video said. And I think what I was able to show with those dollars that should have gone out that didn't is that our vote matters incredibly. And it's not a coincidence that we've seen the voting rights being attacked. And whatever we can, we have to fight in these midterms, doing our part and getting the turnout and figuring out how to make sure that our voice is not diminished. So, it's been a pleasure to be here and share like my expertise and the things that I've seen, but just know that you are your own expert. You know your community better than anybody else. And you have a right to speak up for it, to make sure that it's a community that not only can you live and enjoy, but that future generations can also live and enjoy. So thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Dr. Kane, what are your final thoughts?
Ms. Taylor, as and Ms. Turner and Tyrone will tell you that we that every week it never seems to be enough time, and this is again one of those times that we didn't have enough time to thoroughly present the topic that for the program this week. What I do want to say real quick, and you mentioned it already, one of the easiest things you can do is to vote. Okay, that's one of the easiest things to do. If you want to get involved, that's one of the easier things. Make sure you go out and vote midterms and as well as the presidential election. However, that's not the only thing you can do. There's a lot of things that we can do, and I'm hoping that we can have you back, Ms. Taylor, that can maybe identify some down to the grassroots level, other things that we can do, and we have you when we have you back on the program. We want to thank you very much for coming, and we appreciate you taking your time out of your day to assist us in presenting this topic.
Thank you, Dr. Kane. As we conclude tonight's discussion, I want to thank our guest, Karen A. Taylor, for sharing her expertise, passion, and commitment to ensuring that all communities have access to clean air, safe water, healthy environments, and a voice in the decisions that affect their lives. Environmental justice is more than an environmental issue. It is a public health issue, an economic issue, and a quality of life issue. The places where we live, work, worship, learn, and play have a direct impact on our health and well-being. Tonight, we've explored both the progress that's been made and the challenges that remain. While policies and priorities may change, the need for healthy, thriving communities does not. The future of environmental justice will depend on informed residents, engaged leaders, strong partnerships, and a continued commitment to equity. Thank you to everyone who joined us this evening. We encourage you to stay informed, stay engaged, and continue advocating for healthier communities for future generations. On behalf of Dr. Rogers Kane, Tyrone Jackson, our behind the scenes guy, and everyone at Pause for the Truth, thank you for spending this hour with us. Until next time, be informed, be empowered, and always pause for the truth. Good night.
We appreciate you spending time with us on Pause for the Truth. Ms. Jocelyn Turner and Dr. Rogers Kane are grateful for your support. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, catch us live on Twitch, and most importantly, subscribe on YouTube. A big shout out to Tyrone Jackson at Call Tyrone IT Services for keeping us connected. Join us every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for more enlightening discussions. Thanks, and see you next week.